Today we're going to talk about lipids, and the goal of this video is to describe the chemical structure and function of lipids, explain how lipids are built and broken down, and give examples of lipids in nature. Let's start with this question to get you thinking. Are fats good for you? You may have heard fats are bad, but that's not exactly true. Consuming high levels of fats can have negative health effects, but fats are essential to the survival of living organisms. Now, I'm talking about fats, so what does this have to do with lipids? Well, as we'll see, lipids are fats and oils. So let me back up a step. What are lipids exactly? They're a type of organic compound, and an organic compound is just a substance that contains carbon bonded to another carbon or carbon bonded to one of these other elements like hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. In the picture here, you can see carbon. Those are the black balls, and they're bonded to white balls, which are hydrogen, or red balls, which are oxygens. So as I said a moment ago, lipids are fats and oils, and the monomer of a lipid consists of two components, glycerol and fatty acids. And again, a monomer is just a building block. So basically, lipids are made out of these two smaller components called glycerol. That's the bit highlighted in yellow, and fatty acids, that's the bit highlighted in blue. Okay, so let's talk about each one of those building blocks, starting with glycerol. It contains three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the chemical formula is C3H8O3. Now let's talk about the second component of lipids, fatty acids. It too consists of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And it's always going to have the same kind of structure. On one end is what we call the carboxyl group. It's this C with two O's and an H. And then the rest of it is what we call the chain. Now, there are two types of fatty acids. There are saturated fatty acids and unsaturated fatty acids. A saturated fat is one that doesn't have a double bond in the chain. So you can see that once you're looking at the chain here, every single carbon is bonded to four other things. And saturated fats also are solids at room temperature. These tend to be really unhealthy for you. Unsaturated fats have at least one double bond somewhere in the chain. And unsaturated fats tend to be liquids at room temperature. These are healthier for you. Okay, now how do you build a lipid? Lipids are formed by glycerol and three fatty acids binding together to make what's called a triglyceride. And that glycerol and fatty acid are joined in a process called dehydration synthesis. So in the image here, you can see an H on the glycerol and an OH from the fatty acid coming together. And once you put an H with an OH, you get H2O, which is water. So to build a triglyceride, you need three fatty acids and one glycerol. The one glycerol has three OHs on it, and you're going to take an H from each one of the fatty acids, and when you do that, you'll produce three water molecules and a triglyceride. So that's how you build a lipid. Now let's talk about how you break down a lipid. Triglycerides are separated into smaller subunits in a process called hydrolysis. So in this case, you start with a triglyceride and you add water, specifically 3 molecules of water, and that produces glycerol and 3 fatty acids. Let's finish up by talking about the function of lipids. Humans need lipids for many of their vital functions, such as storing energy and forming cell membranes. So let's talk about the cell membrane bit for a second. Phospholipids actually make up the cell membrane, and a phospholipid is, it looks something like this. There's like a ball on top with these two tails, and the tails are hydrophobic, meaning they repel water. So phospholipids make up the cell membrane, and it's those hydrophobic tails that keep water inside your cells from spilling out. So that's an example of a really useful way that something that lipids are really useful for in your body. Waxes are another category of lipids, and wax covers the feathers of some aquatic birds, keeping them from getting wet when they're in water and rain. And wax also covers the surface of leaves on many plants, preventing the plants from drowning. So to sum up, you've seen the structure of lipids and some of the major functions of lipids.